Welcome to K-State Now with Kansas State University President Dr. Kirk Schultz. I'm Richard Baker. The legislative session is over. We're all done and settled. Is that right?
Yeah, thankfully the legislative session is over. It was for higher education in particular and for state employees, it was a very, very long session. We almost went into furloughs and had people that were going to be out of work because the state budget wasn't passed. And then at the very last minute, literally with hours to go, all state employees were declared essential. And fortunately, none of those kinds of things happened. But considering it was the longest legislative session in Kansas history, they passed a set of tax measures that hopefully will fill in part of the budget gap. But Richard, I think the day it ended, we're already starting to talk about the next session and what we need to do to prepare for the upcoming session in 2016.
That was my next question. What do we need to do?
A lot of folks, I'm starting my 7th year at Kansas State University, and if I look at what we've changed and done differently with the legislature over the 6 previous legislative sessions, my first year or two, typically most of the work was done during the legislative session. We now go to a year-round type of strategy. So for football games in the fall, we invite small groups of legislators onto campus, and obviously they're here to watch the Cats play, but we get a chance to really talk with people about what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish. We show them what's happening on our campus. And we do that with groups of 4 to 5 key legislators at each home game. So we've really expanded that out. And we invite them always. Come a few hours early. And if you're interested in agriculture, we'll take you over. We'll show you the College of Agriculture. We'll talk about the things that we're doing over there. So we use the off session very intensively, not just around athletic events, but to have in-depth conversations about higher education, particularly with the leadership. And that's where a key thing is. And if you think about it, in January, everybody shows up to start having conversations. We can have a little bit longer conversation off session because people don't have 16 other folks wanting to talk to them about different issues.
As you travel the campus today, you really need a 4-wheel drive vehicle to get around with all the construction.
Yeah.
We are adding on to engineering. We're going to renovate Seton Hall. We are building a business administration building. We're adding on to the football stadium. We have a deal in the works or culminated with a Lawrence firm. The Alumni Foundation hit a record of $141 million plus in donations. What happens in January when legislators say, gosh, you're doing real well. You don't need our money?
Yeah, and that's a constant battle that we have to face, not just in Kansas, but my colleague presidents in other states. Is we were told several years ago, we don't have the money, you need to go find alternative ways to do things. Many universities have been very successful at doing that. We've gone out and have, hundreds of millions of dollars coming onto our campuses in private dollars. And then what happens is, if you're not careful, they say, well, wow, you're being so successful, maybe you don't need our money. What we try and do is tell the legislature, this is a continuing partnership. We understand the state doesn't have all the resources that we would like to have, but we still need your partnership. And so all these building projects we talk to them about, we say we're going to do some private fundraising, but we also are asking for some state support. But that is a challenge. Any skeptical legislator who drives through and sees all these cranes goes, well, those folks don't need any dollars. And so we've got to continue to be creative and talk about the things that we're doing for the state. We have a lot of friends and advocates, and those are the ones that we got to make sure also have a good story to tell.
MBAF is going pretty strong now, it looks like to me. Does that bring money into the university?
No, actually, NBAF itself doesn't bring any money to the university. It's a federal laboratory that is located adjacent to campus. Now, as it's built and as it starts functioning, we'll have opportunities for faculty and staff and students to do research there and those kinds of things. But for the next 5 years, largely the impact NBAF is going to have is on construction jobs. At the peak of the NBAF construction, there'll be 1,000 workers on the NBAF site per day. That's a lot of people spending time, money in Manhattan, buying gas, buying food. There'll be some of the NBAF leadership, construction leadership, have actually moved their families to Manhattan because they're going to be here 7 or 8 years by the time the whole thing is done. So that's going to be the immediate impact over the next 4 or 5 years. From a university point of view, not necessarily so much. What we are going to be able to do, though, is we're going to be able to attract some faculty and staff and some students, particularly at the graduate level, in agriculture, veterinary medicine, the hard sciences, the biological and life sciences. They're going to come here because they want an opportunity to do research in what's going to be truly a world-class facility.
Speaking of construction, of prime concern has got to be the stadium. Is that going to be ready for football?
It's basically done.
Really?
It's basically done now as we speak. So if you drive by there, that is the Veneer Complex, it's an amazing project that, just think about it, they were knocking that down in December and January, starting construction back up, and it's done really basically by August 1st.
On a legal note here, we've seen 2 U.S. Supreme Court decisions. Do either of those have any impact here at Kansas State?
I think yes, certainly the legalization of gay marriage, I think, is going to have a significant impact. I see Kansas State as needing to be an inclusive community of people with all different walks of life, and that includes GLBT couples and people like that. That's been part of the Kansas State since I've been here as president. But for example, we could not provide benefits, health benefits, to same-sex couples and things like that because of state regulations and state laws. Now the Supreme Court has weighed in on that. We can be much more progressive in what we do. And people can say, well, maybe I fundamentally disagree with that. We need to continue to attract awesome talent to this state to be successful, not just as a university, but for research, for working with our students. And that means we've got to be able to attract people from all walks of life. And this is going to allow us to continue to have a diverse, inclusive campus atmosphere for our faculty and staff. So I think this is a significant step forward for us institutionally and as a state.
Earlier we mentioned a new deal with a Lawrence firm. Mm-hmm. What is it? Aerotech Incorporated. What is that about, and what kind of opportunities does that offer on the university campus?
So we were talking earlier about all the construction projects across campus, and as people are on K-State this fall, coming back or here for a certain event, one of the other buildings that we are building and finishing up is a new building for the Kansas State University Foundation. And that is kind of catty corner, if you will, from the NBAF site. Now, that in itself is not significant, but the first floor of that particular building was designed to be leasable space for companies and corporations that wanted to have a presence here in Manhattan. And that building is almost completely leased out. Garmin, one of the companies that most people use their navigation devices, is locating there, so they have access and provide job opportunities for Kansas State University undergraduate students to do internships, paid internships while they're here. And Garmin then can use that to attract, talent to go work for them full-time after graduation. I say that because as a precursor to this other company moving here, we didn't really have space in town that was adequate for companies to kind of come and move into. Anytime we have companies come in, they hire our graduates. They provide payroll. They help with a tax base. And you know what? We can have a technology company, but guess what? They have to have people to do PR. They've got to have people to do accounting work. So it's not just in the technical fields that it impacts. So I think we're going to see more and more of these companies not locate major manufacturing here, but what we're going to have is kind of these outpost areas that are great opportunities for faculty for research in consulting, for students, for internships and job opportunities past graduation, and it's going to build a tax base in Manhattan, so it's a win for everybody.
Okay, thank you. This has been K-State Now with Kansas State University President Dr. Kirk Schultz. I'm Richard Baker.